we have to abandon this idea that kids just need to be able to sit in the classroom at a desk and be quiet enough to listen to a teacher, because it's not going to work for all children, as we have seen. And schools need to become places of innovation. They need to become places of noise and chaos, because that is what learning looks like.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all your fears, all your doubts. This is where they die. This is where we come to win, we come to fly. This is where we make our dreams come to life. Welcome to Innovation City.
Welcome to Innovation City, a podcast featuring the innovators, creators, and disruptors who are fueling innovation in emerging markets across the country. I'm Tyler Kelly.
And I'm Leanne Buchanan, and we're really excited to talk with you, Cynthia Chapple. You are the CEO of Black Girls Do STEM and CC Black Labs, if I'm correct.
Correct.
Awesome. And I love the title of CEO. We're going to talk about what your companies do in a moment, but we'd like to start off our conversations by understanding who you are as a person, what makes you tick, what got you into the space. So can we kick it off with a fun question?
Yes. I love the fun questions.
Okay. All right. So what is your superpower and how did you first discover it?
Oh, what is my superpower? I think reading people's body language. And I think it's something that I discovered because I am super expressive, right? Like, I'm giving the story on my face, right? Like, it's not going to be that hard to read into what I'm feeling, how I'm thinking, how I'm reacting, even if I'm not speaking. And so I knew that about myself. And so I think I'm really good with seeing sort of very finite shifts in body language of people in a space to kind of see like who's feeling it, who's not feeling it. And I've also done a lot of sort of training and facilitating for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think that also helped me understand like how people physically have changes in their body when they're uncomfortable, this. And so I think that has become really my superpower, not really reading the room, but really reading individual body language.
That's great. I think I've heard somewhere that the majority of communication is actually nonverbal. It is what's not being said audibly that is where the real message comes across. You know, Cynthia, we were talking a little bit before we got started about STEM and my not love for science, but love-hate relationship. But you are a chemist by trade, and now you're helping to expose the next generation to STEM. Talk to us a little bit about how you discovered your love for science and what that journey looked like for you.
Yeah, so from the earliest time in which I can remember, I have always been curious. I was a kid that walked around with a book, but that also wanted to always know how things worked or didn't work, or why they didn't work, right? So for me, I feel like I was always examining the world around me, right? And asking questions. And I talk about curiosity so much in my work with kids, and just like, how do you become a master at asking questions? Because that's really the key to curiosity, the desire to continue to know, the desire to continue to learn. And so for me, I can't remember a time in my early socialization, in my adult life, where that just wasn't who I was. Right. And so I think that's what curiosity means to me. And that's a big piece of the sort of mission of Black Girls Do STEM, is to spur that curiosity and to trigger it and hit that spark, and to have girls find joy in that learning, to find joy in that sort of question asking. It's this big thing when you're in grad school and you're doing research at that level as a scientist, of like going down the rabbit hole of innovation, right? So I read the first article, and then I go to the next source, and I go to the next source, and I go to the next source, right? Because it's this thing that's captivating you with that learning, with that new discovery, and you're kind of soaked into it. And I just can't remember a time in my life where I wasn't like that. And so I just think it's always been a part of me. And if I had different opportunities to really explore my love of science, of STEM, of really just thinking, right? So much of science and STEM is problem solving and thinking like, how do I get to the next level or the next step? And what's going to be that aha moment, whether it's through literature, whether it's through experimentation, like how am I going to get to that next discovery? And I think that's the beauty and that's the joy. And I've always been a thinker. I'm a pretty imaginative person, and I say I live in my head most of the day.
So, thinking of Black Girls Do STEM, I was listening to a speaker yesterday who was, top world MIT scientist woman. And she was talking about how in her class in the 80s, like she was 5 of like 30, right, at MIT. And what she had found is that only like the brightest women or minorities would apply to a program like that. But half the class was average, So her question was like, where are all the average people in STEM, right? Not just the best and the brightest.
Yeah.
Like, where's everybody else?
Yeah.
So how are you addressing that?
Where's everyone else? I think that in STEM, there is this idea, this Einstein vision, right? And I think we reinforce this Einstein vision that everyone has to be brilliant to the level of Einstein. Everyone has to be making discoveries and publishing thousands of articles and publications in the literature. I think even when we saw the history of like hidden figures and the Black women scientists at NASA, we still presented them in this way of these big brains doing all of these math calculation on chalkboards, right? And so it continues to feed into this like Einstein vision of like you have to be exceptional to be in STEM. And I think what I want and what I am attempting to do with Black Girls Do STEM is really demystify STEM and take away that persona that says only the brilliant should apply. Right? And so when I think about the question of like, where are the average people in STEM? I think it's like the artists that don't understand how their art and their color mixing plays into science. I think it's the dancers that don't understand the implications of music and sound and how that plays into art and science. I think about the ones that we would not consider in STEM or in STEAM that are doing very science related and very technical related things, but we only want to acknowledge the brilliant, the Einsteins, the people with the really big brains that make really big discoveries. And so I try to encompass a really broad spectrum for what STEM means and not reinforce sort of the negative stereotypes with our students and our families.
How early do you have to get in there and to start to change some of these perceptions?
Look, our 6th graders show up and they've already believed the stereotype that girls aren't good at math. And they say it of themselves, right? So we already have children at the 6th grade level, which we start working with, doing the negative self-talk, believing in the stereotypes because they've seen it reinforced in their learning environments, right? And so we have a lot of undoing to do. And I tell a lot of people our first program goal at Black Girls Do STEM is self-worth and confidence. How do we get girls to see themselves as problem solvers, to see themselves as STEM capable, to believe in those abilities that they inherently have, and then subscribe it to some of these areas of science and technology, engineering, and mathematics. Not the other way around, right? Not this idea that we have to teach you to be STEM. No. We have to help you uncover what is in you that is already STEM.
So you take a really unique asset framing approach. I think a lot of times when we see these disparities in opportunity and gaps in representation in fields like STEM, we often have a deficit approach, which is where are you lacking? Why are we so far behind? I'm curious to understand in your own journey, what was it like? You mentioned going to grad school. You mentioned, I think, I was reading your bio and you have a background in chemistry and you were able to create things that have a really unique and innovative coding for products. So talk to us about your personal journey and what it was like to be a Black woman in STEM. And I'm going to shift this a little bit closer.
Yeah, I think, again, my personal journey was very unique, but also similar, right? I think oftentimes I can sit down with so many Black women in STEM and they're going to talk about being in their high school and being the only maybe black student in a pre-calculus or a calculus course. They're going to say I went to university or I went to college and I was the only black female chemistry major at the university, right? Or very few other women or minorities in my science courses at universities, right? And so I think, like, although yes, there's a feeling of isolation that I can speak to about my experience and my environment. And I also can speak to people who also robustly believed in me in those environments. I had a really good undergraduate counselor, and she just was like, I'll let you figure it out, right? Because she knew that I had this sort of resilience and spontaneity about me that even if I didn't do great in a science course, she would dare never say, Cynthia, change your major. Because there was a belief that she had in my abilities as well, right? And so I think we all can point to those sort of experiences, those people that helped with the feeling of being isolated in a space when you are the only black woman or you are the only woman. And then also speak to those professors who were not so friendly to girls in their courses, right? And I've heard a lot of black women tell me those stories. So I think my experience, although I can speak to how it made me feel sort of less than, and I'm a pretty confident person, and I have had people my whole life tell me I was special and reinforce that you are in fact special. But I think about the kids that did not have that and that can't go back to that place of remembering that even though this is hard, does not mean that you are incapable or invalid. And I can remember those thoughts seeping into me as an undergraduate student, as a college student, and even sometimes as an industry professional, right? Even though I have had this person that has been showered with love and people who have affirmed me being who I am. And so I think as much as my experience professionally, in college, educationally, has been somewhat isolating, I also think my experience has been very similar to the stories that I've heard so many other black women tell.
And so, Cynthia, you mentioned some of your challenges in your educational journey. And I want to extrapolate beyond the individual to maybe the macro. Mm-hmm. And some might say, and the data does show this, that this institutions, school, the educational pipeline are failing black folks as it relates to creating more robust opportunities in STEM. Mm-hmm. You're working to change that through your organization. But more broadly, what are some things that you would like to see happen within institutions, within the educational pipeline, to make sure it's more of a hospitable place for black women in STEM?
Yeah, I think there's so many black women at the intersection of that question and in this work that's doing similar things. But I think traditional education owes a hard stop. We all say COVID should have been the hard stop. It should have been the pause. It should have been the regroup. But I think what we also need traditional education to understand is that there is certain communal and cultural dynamics. We talk about cultural competent teaching and those sort of things that need to be incorporated in majority African American schools, kids who come from maybe some lower socioeconomic backgrounds, who have other issues beyond just their ability to sit in the class and learn, that needs to be incorporated within the traditional education model. We are informal learning environment, right? And so we get to set our own best practices. So we can look at data and we can look at these different things and say, what are the best things that's conducive to black girls being engaged in learning STEM, right? And traditional education needs to take a uniform, unique approach for each different population of kids and their needs, right? There is not this prescriptive way to educate, right? And we have to abandon this idea that kids just need to be able to sit in the classroom at a desk and be quiet enough to listen to a teacher, because it's not going to work for all children, as we have seen. And schools need to become places of innovation. They need to become places of noise and chaos, because that is what learning looks like. And it needs to be student driven and student led. And I just think sometimes traditional education in schools, you walk in and it's just all about socializing kids to follow rules. And then we celebrate the rule breakers. Then we celebrate the people who are insane and do crazy things and make, crazy inventions and just are very successful, but then we teach kids to color in the lines, and it's like we have to get rid of the box. The box is not serving majority of our children, even if we think beyond black and white, but it is significantly hurting and harming black children.
That's what that painting's all about right there. You have to check that out later. Talk to me about your program.
Yeah.
Like, so how are you innovating and making a difference?
Yeah, so Black Girls Do STEM, leads with all of this philosophy that I just expounded upon you. But essentially what we do is simple. We bring girls from all the way across the city, from every school district within the metropolitan region. Some of our girls go to private school, right? We really try to mix it up. Of course, our focus is targeted school districts and targeted school partners where we do have sort of like lower socioeconomic students. But our number one qualifier is first generation students, and we say students who do not live within a household with a parent or guardian who has a STEM background educationally or work within the STEM workforce, because the data shows us kids who have proximity even to people who are in STEM have more of an opportunity and aptitude to succeed in STEM. So that's really what we look at beyond the socioeconomics, that sort of qualifier of like, do you have someone in your household within STEM? And we're happy to say that 84% of our students last year were first generation STEM exposed, right? And this year, I think we're on track to also honor that over 80% of our girls are that first generation STEM exposed. So girls come together in a community format from all across the metro region, and they meet one Saturday a month for what we call a high impact STEM engagement. So it includes a STEM workshop that's catered to a specific career pathway. For example, this month, our topic is forensic science. And so girls are doing an array of things. They're doing a lot of different comparison and analysis of evidence, whether it's fingerprints, whether it's fibers, right? And how might a real world forensic science look at these type of items, these type of things in a chemical way, in a microscopic way, etc. And then they do 1 hour of mentoring with the Black woman in STEM. And so we have real life Black women professionals who come in on those Saturdays and mentor with our girls and talk to them about like what it's like to be in a certain field, a certain industry, do how-to exercises. Really, it's about community. It's about knowing someone who is an engineer, who is a scientist, who works for a technology company that you have access to, that you can ask real questions of, right? Whose life and whose background and upbringing you can connect to, because maybe they grew up in the same neighborhood or they graduate from the high school that you're going to go to, right? That real connection. And then finally, our last component is social emotional learning. And so our SEL component is just like over topics that we think are relevant to our middle school population, such as like social media or like setting healthy boundaries, right? Like how do we help our girls be socialized, but also make sure that it's in the sort of that positive socialization.
Are you ready for the lightning round?
Yes, I am ready.
I didn't realize that it was already time for the lightning round.
Yes,
but here
absolutely.
Here we go.
Okay. Well, this actually happened, so I'm pretty sure that this card was written before the pandemic. But if I was stuck in my house for 3 months, the 3 things I'd want by my side are.
Oh, okay. I think it's the 3 things that came out of the pandemic: an air fryer, a puppy, right? Yeah, everybody got a pet. Those are 2 for sure. What would be my 3rd one? Chocolate. I want to have chocolate readily available at all times.
A time when I felt on top of the world.
Oh, this is a hard one. I feel like I'm such high energy. I always feel on top of the world, right? Like most of the time. And so this is a hard one, but I'm trying to really, really think. Okay, there was this award that I got back in 2019. It was actually the Salute to Young Leaders through the St. Louis American Foundation Award. And we were doing the reception downtown at the Four Seasons Hotel, I believe. And it's this really nice venue. And I felt on top of the world because my little niece came to the awards ceremony and she had her little matching doll with their little matching outfits. And I had my Black Girls Do STEM t-shirt on, and me and my niece were taking a photo. And then she was like, am I a black girl that does STEM? And it just like warmed my heart. And it was just like so much confirmation for like kids needing to see role models. And then she started walking around and telling people that she was a part of Black Girls Do STEM. At the time, she was only like 5, and now she's 7. And she really loves astronomy and the stars, and she's learning about it in 1st grade. And so she's for sure going to be a scientist in the future.
Awesome. If I could whisper something in the ear of my younger self, I would say...
Somebody asked me this recently, and I'm going to give you the same response. I would say, get out of your head and into the world. Because I feel like I've been such a person in my head, I feel like oftentimes I didn't fully show up for some of the experiences and the opportunities I have had as a younger person. I think now as an adult, it's a whole nother level of appreciation for every moment and every stage that I get to stand on and sit next to and talk about this amazing work that I get to do. So I would say get out of your head and into the world, right? To live just a little bit more in those moments and not overthink it.
Mm-hmm.
If I wrote a book, its title would be?
Oh, that is a tough one. Oh, if I wrote a book, its title would be What Resilience Doesn't Allow.
Wow. You're going to have to unpack that a little bit.
Yes, that is what my title would be. And it's a lot of what I just said. I think often we're so caught up in the optics of the life we want to live, that we forget to just live it right out loud, messy, imperfect. And I've been that person and been in that space. And so I also think that as resilient as we are and we teach people to push forward and push through, pieces of us are lost in that push through. And it's sometimes like just humanize my feelings and just humanize my experiences. And I don't want to be strong today.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it's a lot there. But that's definitely what I think I would want to talk about.
Ooh, you're giving us a word today? I felt that right here. Well, I think that's it for the lightning round. So Cynthia, we love to make sure that the folks that are listening and watching can get in touch with you. So where can people find you on social media? Yeah. The internets, all the handles, all the things, let us know.
So Black Girls Do STEM is on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at BGDSTEM. So BGD STEM on all of those platforms. So please follow us. We also have a website, www.bgdstem.com. So you can always figure out what we're doing, what we have going on, look at our event calendar to see how you can better engage with us. We're currently still accepting students into our STEM Saturday program until the end of the month, so you'll find that information on our website. And for our CC's Black Lab, we are a new contract manufacturing and consulting firm, and so we're just getting off the ground, and so we don't have all of our stuff set up yet. So you could just follow me at Cynthia Chapple on Twitter to learn a little bit more about what's going to be happening with that setup later on in the year.
Wonderful. Cynthia, thank you. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you all for the invite. I'm super excited.
Thank you for listening to Innovation City. If you like this episode, you can find more episodes at innovationcity.co or anywhere where you watch or listen to podcasts. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and we'll see you next week.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all your fears, all your doubts. This is where they die. This is where we come.